Well, hello again. I gotta adjust my camera here so I can see myself. Notes. Oh yes, I sometimes forget this on these YouTube videos, but I'm the author of How to Write a Damn Good Novel, How to Write a Damn Good Novel 2, and other books on creative writing, How to Write a Damn Good Mystery, How to Write a Damn Good Thriller. Yeah. All damn good, by the way. And the one on myth is the best. Well, I don't know, they're all pretty good. Shouldn't judge my own work, right? Glasses. I know some of my former students who are seeing this video. I used to teach at UC Extension in Berkeley, UC Berkeley Extension in San Francisco and in Berkeley, and at Oregon Writers Colony and Squaw Valley Writers Conference every year for 20 years or so. And so I have a lot of people who've been in my workshops. They're probably looking at this and they're thinking, man, is he getting old? Well, happens to everybody, I guess. I've decided I just as soon not get old so fast. That seems to not take no time at all. Anyway, today's talk is about premise. Made some notes so I wouldn't forget the important things. When I was learning my craft, which I still have yet to master completely, which is nice because it's a lifetime pursuit, you never run out. When I was first in Writer's Workshop with Lester Gorn, he used to talk about premise, and he used to talk about Lajos Egri and the art of dramatic writing. I'll spell the guy's name. It's Lajos Egri. He wrote a book called The Art of Dramatic Writing. He wrote another one called The Art of Creative Writing. The Art of Dramatic Writing is, I think, the most useful. Anyway, and Lester used to talk about premise, which is sort of the centerpiece of Egri's theory. It's from the, from the old days. Yeah, and How to Write a Damn Good Novel, I explain different views of premise and over the centuries, starting with Aristotle and so on, and why this Egri's way of expressing it is the best way, or a good way. Let's put it that way. There are other ways. It's the idea that it's the core, it's the thing that holds the story together. It's not a moral. You see, because a moral, a story with a moral, moral is a universal. Like, greed leads to insanity might be a moral, or greed is bad would be immoral. But a premise would be more like greed leads to happiness or something like that. Anyway, I'll just talk more about specifics. But anyway, when I first heard the concept of premise, I was completely baffled. And Lester used to talk about it every week. So he would tell me, well, go read Egri 20 times and you'll get it. Well, I read Egri over and over and over again and I didn't get it. I still didn't. I probably got inkling of the concept, but I didn't see how it was useful or how you put it to work. So I was at that time a claims adjuster and I would drive around my car all day. So I read Egri's book into a tape recorder, and I played it on the tape machine over and over and over. And still wasn't coming clear. And one day I was on Polk Street, parking in front of Babe Zanka's auto body shop, and I was listening to the tape, and all of a sudden it hit me. How it worked, and what it meant, and the power of it. And I stopped right there and started taking notes because I didn't want to forget the insight that I had just gotten. I thought, maybe if I don't write it down, I'll forget. So I sat there writing it down as double parked, as people are beeping their horns and threatening me, and you know, lucky I didn't get shot. Anyway, what that insight that I got, I suddenly saw the great value of it, because up until that time, except for the fact that Lester thought it was valuable and he kept telling me it was valuable, I didn't see the value. Now I see the value. A premise, there's a certain kind of story that has a premise, and there's kinds that don't. Like adventure stories are just about an adventure. That would be their, you know, premise. But a really great dramatic story has a premise, which means that at its root there's this transformational aspect. The characters are transformed by the dramatic events. So it's similar to a thesis in a nonfiction book, and it has somewhat of the same kind of functions. Like if you were going to write a nonfiction book about, say, and your premise might be something like Robert E. Lee was a great general, or Robert E. Lee was a lousy general. But whichever one you were to select, it would control what you wrote, what you put in that book. If you were going to write Robert E. Lee was a great general, then you would include things like, you know, his flanking maneuvers and the, you know, his, and you would maybe have some of his mistakes, like at Gettysburg, pick his charge, but you would tone that down, or you would excuse Lee, or, you know, but this idea that Lee is a great general would control what it is you'd include in that book, and what you'd tone down and what you'd overlook. You might say, write a book, pesticides are beneficial or pesticides are harmful. That would be your thesis of one way or the other. And so whichever you chose, you can see how that would determine what you'd be writing, and how your focus and your where you'd be aiming your arguments, what kind of arguments you'd be making. Okay? So in fiction, well, in nonfiction, you'd use as your proofs other people's ideas, other people's theories, other people's, you know, you'd quote statistics, you'd quote books, you know, you quote articles, you know, use them as proofs of the argument that you were making in your thesis statement. Okay, the premise in fiction works the same way. Like, as an example, the premise of the Christmas Carol is that the forced self-examination of Scrooge's life leads to kind of leads him to become a Santa Claus figure, right, or a saintly figure. It's that's what it is. That's the premise of that book. So, if you were writing a premise is about the transformation of a character through the actions of the story. Well, anyway, I wrote How to Write a Damn Good Novel. I thought, well, I'm applying these theories, centuries-old theories, to novel writing and other kinds of fiction. And I thought I was so clear, everybody would get it. Well, my students would read my book and they'd say, I read your book, it was really great. And I got to work on my story, and I'd say, what's your premise? And they'd go, good overcomes evil, or some moral, right? Or some, you know, greed is bad, or, you know, the moral. Or love transforms, or something like that. But it's more specific than that. The premise of a fictional story should be more specific. I'll give you an example. you can define a premise this way. And after all these years of teaching it, 30 years I've been teaching premise in workshops. Finally found an easy way to do it. The way to make it most clear of how you apply the premise principle and what the premise principle really is. If you define a dramatic story as a dramatic story is about a dramatic character or characters, and dramatic characters are specific kinds of characters. They're bigger than life, they're determined, they're self-actuated or whatever. They're dramatic. Dramatic characters are dramatic. And they have a dramatic struggle. Say, in the old days we had a draft. You have a young man, he's drafted, he goes in the army, he's changed by the boot camp, he goes to war changes him, and at the end he's a different person. Well, that's the way premise works, is you're showing these proofs, these incidents that happen that change him in small increments, and they lead to this big change in his life. That would be the premise of a real person's life. So you can define a dramatic story as a dramatic character in a dramatic struggle who has a dramatic transformation. Well, your premise for your particular story is, who is that dramatic character? In what way is he that dramatic character? How you define him or her? Like you say, a shy young lady falls in love with an aloof rich guy, and in this love, as she pursues him and as they develop their relationship, that relationship is a dramatic struggle for her to adapt to him and try to win him, and in the end she's transformed. So it's a dramatic character in a dramatic struggle. It has a dramatic transformation. That's the definition of a dramatic story, and that's your premise. Your premise is simply to name the kind of character you're dealing with, to name the kind of struggle they're engaged in, and to name the transformation that takes place. This premise then becomes a tyrant when you go to write your story, because it determines what you include and what you exclude. The incidents that you portray, these dramatic incidents you portray, are chosen based on what your premise is, or they're left out of the story depending on what your premise is. Detective stories and romances and genre fiction such as that usually have the same premise. The determined detective brings justice. Well, they're all the same, right? That's okay. That's what people buy the books for. That's why people buy romances and detective stories and so, because they know what to expect. They want they want the same premise over and over and over and over again. That's okay. I enjoy it myself, and I think millions of people do. Same with romances. We know at the beginning they're going to get together. That's okay too. I mean, other people read those kind of books and they go, oh, romances are so horrible, they're so predictable. Well, that very predictability is the thing that romance readers like. Different tastes, different strokes for different folks. So when you sit down to write a really great story, you're going to have that kind of transformation in a character through the dramatic struggle. And you're going to start out with a character who's bigger than life, who's a dramatic kind of character. Might be super shy, might be reclusive, or whatever. But during the course of the story, going to be transformed into something totally different than when they were in the beginning. Egri pointed out in one of the insights he has in how to write, let's see, the second one, the art of creative writing. He points out that even though these characters go through transformation, there's something about the character that remains the same. Like a man might be gung-ho, join the Marines, go to war, and become disillusioned, thinking that he's in the wrong war, the wrong place, shouldn't be, you know, all kinds of things can come to him during this war. And at the end, he's now becomes, like just during Vietnam, say, he becomes an anti-war activist. Well, he was gung-ho in the beginning for the Marines, now he's gung-ho anti-war. So he's transformed in his, he's, you know, so say patriotic to anti-patriotic, but he's still gung-ho. So there's part of him that's still the same. I wanted to close with the premise that I used to use this once in a while because it's like really clear and it's really unusual. Well, this is the kind of thing that it's kind of an interesting book you can write. This is kind of a common story, however. Drinking leads to enlightenment. Okay, how does drinking lead to enlightenment? Well, you got a character. He's, let's see, put upon by modern life. He's got a lot of stresses. He drinks a lot. He's trying to make it in business. He's trying to be a great salesman. He gets drunker and drunker and drunker. And he becomes addicted to alcohol, becomes an alcoholic. And he loses his wife. He loses his job. He's living in the gutter. And something dramatic happens. He gets run over by a bus, and while he's in the hospital, he realizes how low he's gone, and he meets a fellow alcoholic who's there to give an AA meeting at the hospital, and he hears the message, he can quit. So he joins AA, right? And in AA, he learns to accept a higher power, he learns to, right? And then he struggles back out of this hole of alcoholism, finds his sobriety, and it leads him to God, and he becomes a monk. And while a monk, he finds enlightenment as through meditation and prayer, or in good works. Okay, so this is how drinking alcohol leads to enlightenment. Right? But there's all kinds of premises that are, you know, like you'd say, well, not obviously, not obvious, like the agonies of a romance leads to, I don't know, could lead to anything. Anyway, make up your own premise, and I'll see you next time. And I hope you let me know. I'm going to put, well, if you've been watching this, you've probably seen my name and email address. So if you like the tape, or you want something, you want another kind of tape, you want some other kind of discussion, I'm planning now to interview some writers and so on, and so have a big old series of YouTube videos, and let me know what you'd like to see, and I'll try to see if I can accommodate you.